Guten Abend.
Good morning.
Nacht.
Willst du?
Das ist Shivatma?
Ja, we just... Oh.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Wie geht es dir?
Danke den Umständen entsprechend.
Ja, das ist Krishnas Arrangierung.
Ja. Aber du verstehst ein bisschen Deutsch. Okay.
So, English, we'll do it now.
Ja, okay, Englisch.
It is a great honor and pleasure to be in contact with you and have this...
No, thank you very much. Actually, I'm very grateful to you. I've always considered Germany to be an extremely important country. Ein sehr wichtiges Land.
Oh. Sometimes it's hard to imagine that Germany should play such an important role in the spreading of Krishna consciousness. But if I remember correctly, even Bhaktivinoda Thakur should have said something about Prussia and Russia should be the leading countries in the revolution, in the Krishna conscious revolution or something, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Germany is intelligent people. I almost every day I read the news in Deutsche Welle.
Oh, okay.
And also France 24. It's so I actually most of the news I read is from Europe. I like the European perspective. So Deutsche Welle, BBC, France 24, and so I'm sort of follow what's going on in these countries, and I really believe that. Anyway, Krishna West. So the questions, die Frage.
Yes, I thought maybe we should give a short introduction about your person for all the listeners who have never heard about you or have only heard a very few about you. I thought maybe Chandrasekhar Prabhu, he can give a short introduction about you. He knows you better than we, if he likes, for a couple of minutes, 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll go chant. Bis bald.
So my first question is, who is Hridayananda Das Goswami?
His Holiness Hridayananda Das Goswami, also known as Howard Resnick. He's one of the early direct students or disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the founder of the Hare Krishna movement. Very early on, he took on big responsibilities that Prabhupada personally gave him in regards to managing all of South America. This was after, of course, doing extensive traveling in the United States, giving lectures around the country. He was married for a short while and then took sannyas again from Srila Prabhupada, and has been a sannyasi since if I'm not mistaken, early 70s, late 60s. He was a very important member of the project to translate Srila Prabhupada, to finish the translation and the commentaries of the Srimad Bhagavatam after Srila Prabhupada's passing away. He's been an initiating spiritual master since Srila Prabhupada's passing away. He has thousands of disciples worldwide, and he's definitely a forethinker, a cutting, we could say, historical visionary in terms of pushing the boundaries, let's say, of ISKCON into the future, into the modern Western world.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Should I call him?
Yes. Hare Krishna.
Ich komme zurück.
Thank you very much. Yes, the news has spread also in Germany right now that there is a kind of project or a mission called Krishna West, introduced by you a couple of months ago, even with a mission statement, which everybody can read on your official website. And even the news has spread that you like to visit Europe, especially Germany, and many of the listeners, they have either heard nothing about Krishna West or maybe only some little bits of Krishna West. And our first question to you, Hridayananda Maharaj, is, can you give a short explanation for maybe 120 seconds or so? What is Krishna West?
First of all, and most importantly, Krishna West is an ISKCON project. It's not an alternative to ISKCON. It's a program within ISKCON. And it is an attempt to facilitate, which literally means to make easier, to facilitate Krishna consciousness for Western people. Prabhupada was is a very sort of complex, sophisticated thinker, and so often you will find Prabhupada saying different things on the same subject, because there are, in this world, different aspects, different facets of the subject. So, still, many times, not once, not twice, not three times, many times Prabhupada said that we can make certain adjustments. In fact, he said we could take all risk, make all changes in order to make our preaching successful. And then there are other statements from Prabhupada saying, don't change anything. So this is, in order to understand Prabhupada intelligently and not foolishly, we have to consider these things. Prabhupada is a sophisticated thinker. And if one's approach to Prabhupada is simplistic, then one is going to end up with foolish conclusions. So an advanced, sophisticated thinker requires intelligence to understand. So you have Prabhupada saying, don't change anything, and you have Prabhupada saying, you can change anything, or just change whatever you have to change to make the preaching work. So how do these things fit together? This is my understanding, as unfortunately, perhaps the last ISKCON leader living in the Western world, who was personally trained by Prabhupada at a GBC level. I say unfortunately because I miss many of my godbrothers who I used to work with. My understanding is, from living with Prabhupada, from studying his works and serving him, most of my life, that there are three things we cannot change. When Prabhupada says don't change anything, because every day he was changing things in other areas, but when Prabhupada says don't change anything, there are three things we cannot change, which are our philosophy, our basic spiritual practice, and our institution. In other words, we should preach Prabhupada's philosophy, practice bhakti yoga as he taught us, and we should do that within ISKCON. So those are the three things that we cannot change. Sometimes people compare Krishna West, or they wonder if Krishna West is a reincarnation of the great New Vrindavan experiment. Many years ago when Kirtanananda Swami changed many things. So what I explain is, actually, with all due respect, because Kirtanananda Swami served Prabhupada in many ways, but he changed all three of those things. Okay. He actually made philosophical changes, because the GBC, back then I was on the GBC, and the GBC asked me to study the case, and it was actually based on my report to the GBC that they took action on the matter, based on my paper that I wrote. So Kirtanananda was actually changing the philosophy in certain ways. He changed the basic practice. In other words, we don't sing samsara in the morning. Well, samsara literally in Sanskrit means material existence, samsara dava. Anyway, just joking. So, but he actually changed the basic program in terms of japa, in terms of Mangalarti, in terms of everything. Mm-hmm. And so philosophy, practice, and he was not loyal to Prabhupada's institution. Mm-hmm. So again, on these three, in fact, he explicitly said that he didn't accept the GBC. Satsarupa, before Kirtanananda left ISKCON, Satsarupa went to New Vrindavan to interview him. And he said to him, because again, I wrote the paper on this, and Satsarupa Maharaj said to Kirtanananda Swami, if all the GBC believe this and you believe that, how do you explain it? He said, well, obviously, they're all wrong. And it was, he said it a priori. In other words, just automatically wrong because he was the acharya. So on those three essential points, Kirtanananda Swami, with all due respect to him for the good things he did, changed all three. We don't change any of them. And so therefore, when Prabhupada says don't change anything, I understand that to mean philosophy, practice, and institution. When Prabhupada says, as he does in the purport to Bhagavatam 4.854, take all risks, and just do whatever you have to do to make the preaching work. And when Prabhupada says, as he does many, many times, we don't care about things like dress, that's not, we care about preaching. Prabhupada sent Tamal Krishna Goswami to China, and Tamal Krishna Goswami did that outstanding service, and he did it only because he was able to adjust those external things. So my belief, and this is just my belief, Krishna will show whether I'm right or wrong, is that historically there can be major obstacles to powerfully spreading our movement. And those obstacles are not only legal. Situation in China or in Cuba or in the former Soviet Union, where there were overwhelming legal obstacles and political obstacles to our traditional presentation. I believe that in the Western world, there are major cultural obstacles.
Okay.
And I believe that a cultural obstacle may be just as effective in keeping the movement from spreading as a legal impediment. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so this is not a criticism of any other devotees. It's not a criticism of any temple. It's not a criticism of anything. It's just a practical consideration. Mm-hmm. So Krishna West, based on my, you could say, lifelong study of world religions and world history in general, sociology, ISKCON, I've been studying ISKCON my life, I believe that in order for us to go to the next stage, we're Hare Krishna in Germany, in France, in America, Canada, Brazil, wherever, in the Western world, in order for us to become a powerful, major religion, we have to, or that we should adjust certain things. Now, this does not mean, as people, this kind of disturb some people. Does that mean we're going to wear blue jeans on the altar to worship the deities? And no, it doesn't mean that. I'll tell you that this is in terms of, let's say, ISKCON as it has traditionally existed, with certain dress codes, and Festival of India, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A spiritual movement like ISKCON, really any, let's just take ISKCON for now, but it's sort of a general principle. In order to survive and flourish, of course the first issue is survival, but let's say, for example, let's say you live in Germany and your first, obviously, need is to survive. But assuming that you do survive, the next point is you want to live well.
Yes.
Gutes Leben. I mean, you actually want a good life and to flourish, not merely survive. So, in order for ISKCON not merely to survive, but to flourish, any movement like ISKCON, we must accomplish two great historical obligations, which are to preserve our tradition intact, to preserve our tradition, and to adapt to changing times. If we only adapt and don't preserve, then obviously we just become something else. Mm-hmm. We change ourselves into something else. Mm-hmm. Preserve and don't adapt, history shows that is actually equally dangerous.
How is
because
that?
Well, social science and history shows, like take an animal that does not adapt to its environment becomes extinct. And just like most new restaurants go out of business, it's a difficult sector, commercial sector. And so most new restaurants go out of business and most new religions go out of business. And this has actually been studied by social science, and reports are published that those religions or those new religious movements, I understand that Krishna Consciousness is the oldest, but as a worldly institution, as an institution in the world, it's new.
Yes.
And so science has studied these things, and the conclusion is that all of the religions that survive and flourish and become important in the world adapt. And religions that don't adapt do not. And so again, there are some devotees in ISKCON who focus on preservation. In other words, let us preserve a certain traditional way of dress, although there's evidence actually from our own tradition that even, let's say, like a sannyas dhoti is not really traditional, because on the covers of our books, Lord Chaitanya doesn't dress that way. The 6 Goswamis, Prabhupada told me they're the ideal Vaishnava sannyasis. And we know from the song in fact, Prabhupada told me to study them. Prabhupada told me that to understand Vaishnava sannyas, or in Chaitanya's line, study the 6 Goswamis and study them in the song, Vande Rupa Sanatana. Prabhupada told me that in Vrindavan. And so in that song it said clearly, Kopina Kantashrito. They wore rags and copings. And so, in fact, one devotee scholar said that Bhakti Siddhanta saw that the Ramakrishna mission was very successful, and they wore this kind of sannyas dress, so then he adopted it.
Oh, interesting.
So getting back to the point, my attitude towards the traditional way that ISKCON does things, I respect that. Mm-hmm. I'm not criticizing it. I'm not attacking it. I'm not trying to destroy it. I respect it because there are devotees who feel inspired to preserve a tradition that is coming down to us from India. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. At the same time, preservation must be balanced by adaptation. Adaptation does not replace preservation. It does not defeat preservation. It's not competing with preservation. It balances it.
Okay. So, how do you explain that there are a couple of concerns and even fears on the side of ISKCON devotees, even ISKCON leaders, from a historical point of view? You said in our last discussion that you consider yourself as a student of history.
I think it's perfectly natural that some devotees, including some leaders, are concerned and maybe a little bit uneasy. I think that's natural because when human beings, even human beings practicing bhakti yoga, because we still have our human aspect. In fact, those times in ISKCON when we tried to deny our human dimension, didn't go so well. So, as human beings, if we are completely fixed in a certain way of doing things, and everyone does it that way, or everyone at least agrees that's the way ultimately it should be done. And then someone comes up with a different idea, even if that different idea ultimately is not against the tradition, it just wants to balance certain things and add certain things, it's a perfectly normal human reaction to be alarmed. For one thing, because I have not been actively working with the other leaders for many years at a GBC level for various reasons in my own life. The main reason is, trying to recover from the early years and what we went through.
Okay.
And so people fear the unknown. So even though people know that I've been in ISKCON a long time, but what is he up to now? What's he going to do now? And so because they don't see me all the time, they don't talk to me, and because I have a certain influence with devotees, with many devotees around the world, there's, I think, in a sense, a rational fear. Because as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, intelligence in the mode of goodness is to know what is actually dangerous or not dangerous. So I really believe that I am not dangerous to ISKCON. In fact, I think I may even help ISKCON. But still, given their limited knowledge about me, I think their concern is somewhat rational. And the solution is to communicate. Mm-hmm. And because ISKCON is a large global society, because everyone is very busy and going here and there, it just takes some time before people get to a comfort level in terms of their understanding. Because I can say something, and fairness to people that are concerned about this program, and because I want to be fair to them and not just defend myself. In fact, I just wrote a letter to our communications minister about this, that because for many years I was inside of ISKCON, but outside of, you could say, the traditional types of association. I didn't go to many of these big festivals. There are just certain places and certain occasions where everyone gets together and talks to each other and maintains friendships and so on and so forth. And for many years, I have kept a distance from those things. And I think that was an intelligent decision on my part, not because the devotees are, not good, but just for various reasons, personal reasons. I just think it was the right thing to do for me. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, I think I developed a certain objectivity in my vision. And I think, frankly, an objectivity which is not always possible when you're right in the middle of something, whatever it is. I mean, for example, probably some devotees outside of Krishna West can see certain things about it that I can't see because I'm in the middle of Krishna West. And so it's just a general rule for everyone that you sometimes need to hear from other people about yourself or about what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So I believe that in being loyal to ISKCON, but in a sense physically removed from it, that I developed a certain objectivity. At the same time, because I was not, you could say, invested in cooperation. I mean, obviously I want ISKCON to be successful and peaceful, but apart from that, I really didn't care like people think. Like, I don't care what you think about me, I don't care what you think about my ideas. I'm going to speak what I think is true, and my concern is my own integrity and not what you think about me. Mm-hmm. Which is nice, but that also has its limits. So, in other words, because I was in that mood, I expressed myself sort of in a strong way, and in a way that startled many people. And my mother, actually, when I was a child, my mother used to say to me, "It's not what you say, it's how you say it." And so now that Krishna West is growing and I'm becoming re-engaged with devotees and working with other leaders, and I have to think about things that I never thought about for many years, like regional councils and temple presidents and GBCs, because for many years it just wasn't part of my life. But now, because Krishna West is growing and there are leaders, councils and GBCs and presidents and regional GBCs who have a legitimate interest in what we're doing because it affects them. And so I respect and I recognize the legitimacy of their concern, because if something affects you, then you have a natural right to be involved in how that thing that affects you is developing. And so I respect that, and therefore now you could say I'm in a process of reintegrating myself at an administrative level, and even you could say sort of reestablishing old relationships. Now, when I was a GBC, and I had a very large, I would say, extremely cooperative. In fact, you can test this. You can go back and look at all the old GBC records for GBC meetings for many, many years, and what you'll find is that there was hardly ever a problem with my zone. Because basically GBC meetings deal with problems. You know, they may have like for a half hour, everybody gets to say all the nice things that happen in their zone, you know, and everyone gets 5 minutes or something. But basically GBC meetings are about problems. And go back and look at the GBC records. You'll find that my zone in Latin America or Florida almost never caused any trouble to ISKCON. In fact, it was probably the zone that caused the least trouble.
So that means the concerns, there may be that you consider yourself as a kind of the follower acharya of Srila Prabhupada, has no substance.
Okay. The way I put it is that there's acharya with a capital A and acharya with a small a. So when Prabhupada says that the acharyas are guiding the whole course of Vedic civilization, I will say it now. I'll say it to anyone that asks me. No, I'm not ISKCON's acharya. I'm not guiding the whole course of human civilization. On the other hand, Prabhupada did say many times that we should all be acharyas. You, me, and everyone should be an acharya, which simply means that you behave properly and teach people.
Right.
And so I understand also that because ISKCON for so many years has had to defend itself against what I call Gaudiya Vikings, these different groups that attack ISKCON, steal devotees, and just basically just cause trouble. Usually from the Gaudiya Mutt. Not always. Also the Ritwik, silliness, and various things. So therefore, it's like after 9/11, America, it's like that attitude, if you're not with us, you're against us, and everyone is a potential enemy. And it's just now, after 9/11, which was 2001, it's really just now, like 11, 12, 13 years later, that even in America, people are starting to say, enough. In other words, we can't just go for the next 1,000 years like we're at war with everyone. And so people are tired of this, and the trauma is kind of wearing off. And so people want to go back to a normal life. Yes, be vigilant and make sure you listen, to everyone's telephone. But, just kidding. But still, so in the same way, ISKCON has just come out of a period of having to defend itself against real attacks. Mm-hmm. Attacks where so-called acharyas from the Gaudiya Mutt really wanted to steal devotees, take over ISKCON, and there have been so many deviations. So I think it's natural that when a movement faces that in the leaders, you develop a certain mentality. And when someone within ISKCON starts saying something different, oh my God, here it comes again.
Yes.
And so I think that the ISKCON's recent history explains some of the fear about what this is leading to. However, no, actually, I can say very openly to anyone who will just listen that I'm not the acharya, and actually I'm not qualified to be the acharya because I have to live with myself. And I know very well that I like Prabhupada, and that I'm not qualified to be the acharya. I know that, and I say it very openly. And frankly, I don't even want the job, because there's part of me that too much wants to just go to some nice, quiet, beautiful place and write books. So no, I'm not the acharya, and I don't want to be the acharya. In fact, I always say to devotees around me that my greatest wish is that Krishna West become obsolete, and as soon as possible. In other words, the reason I'm introducing this is because in my own personal relationship with Prabhupada somehow or other trusted me at a certain level. I mean, and I'm saying these things, I hope, not out of pride, but just because somehow there are things that really happened. In early 1970, actually about 44 years ago, some devotees told Prabhupada about certain things I was doing, and Prabhupada said, as devotees reported to me, Prabhupada said that this boy has a transcendental brain. And he sent for me. I just received first initiation. Prabhupada sent for me, and he wanted to talk to me. And when I think back in my relationship with Prabhupada, many times he would just sort of confide in me certain things. I mean, most of the most powerful statements that Prabhupada made to me, the ones that really I remember, were not answers to questions I raised. Prabhupada just wanted to tell me something. Mm-hmm. And so in those many experiences with Prabhupada, and private experiences, and not just I don't claim to have some special knowledge that other people don't have, but in private conversations, Prabhupada really emphasized it. And I know that Prabhupada wanted to transform the world. And, Prabhupada would often, because again, he was a very sophisticated thinker, he would often say different things. For example, there's what I call cucumberism. Cucumber is that vegetable, because Prabhupada, it's that vegetable is called a cucumber. It's green, shaped like that, mostly water. They put it in salads.
Yes.
Actually, I'll tell you what it is. I have a dictionary here. Anyway, in Bengali, the word for cucumber and the word for diamond are apparently they're similar words. And so Prabhupada would say that, he would quote this Bengali saying that if there's it's a gurkha. Gurkha. So Prabhupada would say that if you sell a gurkha, cucumber,
yes,
there are many customers, because especially back then in India, it cost practically nothing, But if you sell a diamond, there are few customers, and you can't expect a lot of people to take to Krishna consciousness. Now, Prabhupada really didn't speak that way to me. Prabhupada every day was getting letters from his spiritual children who were discouraged, because he had sent them out to the far corners of the world, and they would write and say, I'm discouraged, people aren't coming, we're not making devotees. So Prabhupada every day had to deal with discouraged spiritual children.
Yes.
And so as a loving father, he would encourage them. And he would say that you can't expect so many people to come, this is the diamond, just chant Hare Krishna and keep preaching. But with me, Prabhupada really didn't speak that way. Because I think because his real wish, he told me, basically we have to change the world. And again, he didn't only tell me, it's not some secret information I received. He told everyone, but with me personally, he often emphasized that. One time he said to me, what is the use of your being American if you don't do something wonderful? So, therefore, because my body is getting older, which of course you could never guess by looking at me, but anyway, that's a joke. Because my body is getting older, and Prabhupada did those instructions not only entered my ears, but my heart. And how should I put it? I understand and I respect those devotees who say, no, ISKCON's going well, there's no real problem. We made 7 devotees last year. That's fine. I'm thinking in terms of 700 a year or 7,000. Not 7. So, but again, I respect those devotees. They're good devotees. They're sincere. And they love Prabhupada. They love Krishna. So I respect them. And they don't want to be discouraged. They don't want to hear the sky is falling. However, I received certain instructions from Prabhupada. And Prabhupada shared with me in a very intimate, powerful way what I know are his real wishes and dreams. Mm-hmm. And therefore, I cannot, as they say in good conscience, I cannot sit back and not try to do what for I have studied Prabhupada's teachings and studied history, studied religion, studied social science, and I've come up with a plan. I've come up with a plan within Prabhupada's instructions. Everything that I'm doing, Prabhupada directly authorized many times, actually, not once. So within Prabhupada's orders, and to try my best, not as the acharya of ISKCON, but simply as one disciple of Prabhupada who, before he leaves this world, has to try. It's very important to me. When I leave this world, I have to be able to say to Prabhupada, I tried my best.
Okay.
One last thing I was going to say, and I forgot, now I'll say it. Giriraj Swami, my dear godbrother, told me a story. Actually told me many times, because I wanted to make sure I didn't miss it. And which I think is extremely important. You may know the story that just before Prabhupada left this world, he sent his servant to call Giriraj in the middle of the night. So, you know the story. So Giriraj went there, and it was a very dramatic moment. Probably he had to come and put his ear next to Prabhupada's lips to even hear what Prabhupada was saying. And Prabhupada said, when I am gone, will this movement go on? And Giriraj gave this sort of a standard answer. Yes, Prabhupada, we follow the principles and chant Hare Krishna. And Prabhupada directly indicated that actually, he said there must be intelligence and organization. So that's Krishna West. It's meant to be complementary in the sense to offer something to balance so that our preservation and our adaptation are balanced, are in balance. If you go too much to one side, I'm actually aware that my own debt to those who focus more on preservation. Because if there was a Krishna West and there was no traditional group, become out of balance. You could become unbalanced. Okay. And so I'm not fighting against the traditional way. I'm actually grateful for it because I think it's a beautiful thing to preserve our tradition. And I think it's good. I think it's like Heraclitus. I give this example of Heraclitus, the pre-Socratic philosopher, Greek philosopher, who said that if you look at a bow, like bow and arrows, that the bow, when it's strung, it appears to be at rest. But actually, there's a constant tension between the two ends of the bow, and that tension is what gives the bow power. The power is coming from the tension. And so, having a proper tension, not an unhealthy tension, but a healthy tension between preservation and adaptation actually makes ISKCON more powerful.
Okay.
And so if you tie the string only at one end, there's no power. Mm-hmm. And so if there was only Krishna West,
only adaptation.
Yes. You can't merely adapt, you also have to preserve. And so I think what I'm asking the devotees to see is that at the present time, I believe there is a lack of balance. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to balance ISKCON, not change it. I'm trying to balance it.
a devotee 2 days ago asked us, why is it called Krishna West? Krishna is above Eastern, Western, etc.
That is an amazing question from people who see nothing wrong with Festival of India.
Yes, right.
I'll tell you why Krishna West. No one, you see, in ISKCON, it's interesting. No one complains when ISKCON calls itself like we just go to the New Age programs or Bhakti Fest or Kirtan festivals. No one complains when we kind of disguise ourselves as straight edge musicians, and or we're Hindus or Festival of India. No one has a problem with that. Why Krishna West? First of all, because it is Western civilization that is actually transforming the world. If you say Western civilization, everyone knows what you mean. If you say Northern civilization, that doesn't even mean anything. Southern civilization, what does it mean? Australia, Mexico, Argentina, it doesn't even mean anything.
Right.
If you say Eastern civilization, then it starts to maybe mean something. But then is it Far East? Is it Japan and China? Is it India? But still, when you say Eastern culture, it means something. And so the point is that, frankly, going all the way back thousands of years, you can go back to the sort of those great wars between Persia and Greece, the Battle of Marathon. It's Alexander, and so there has always been, going back thousands of years, there has always been a tension, a rivalry, at times cooperation, but there has always been East and West. Mm-hmm. North and South is more a regional thing. In other words, you can talk about the difference between North and South Germany, North and South England. In fact, there was a recent, there's a great novel in English that was made into a movie called North and South about the tension between North and South England, the American North and South. Mm-hmm. North and South Italy is a major issue.
Right.
However, North and South as cultural indicators only make sense regionally. Mm-hmm. On a global level, it's really East and West.
Okay.
And at the present time, oh, bless you, Gesundheit. And regionally, at the present time, Western civilization is rapidly becoming global civilization. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's one fact. So if you're going to have a special preaching program, that's probably the most important one you could possibly have. Number two, and ISKCON has hundreds of special preaching programs. A second point is that, in terms of results, the West is a special problem. So we have this situation, if we open our eyes, that ISKCON preaching seems to be weakest in the most important part of the world. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, for example, take Europe. There is a clear difference between, let's say, the Hare Krishna movement in France and Hungary. Or look at Germany and the Ukraine. I mean, do you have festivals where 8,000 German devotees come? They do in the Ukraine. The Ukraine is much smaller. It's much smaller than Germany.
1 second. They have introduced a festival here in Germany called Kirtan Mela 2 or 3 years ago, and announced it as the biggest festival in history of Germany, the biggest Krishna Conscious festival. And they did really nice work, and it was really a very nice set up festival. However, my observation was that more than half of the participants came from Russia and Ukraine. maybe even more.
Yes. Yes, yeah. So, yes. I mean, these two facts, that the West is the dominant culture of the world now. In fact, it's getting to the point where it's almost not even Western culture, it's just world culture. Mm-hmm. And the fact that our preaching seems to have most difficulty in terms of really breaking through. Of course there are nice devotees. Of course there are nice programs. Of course we make some new devotees. But in terms of having a big, powerful movement, it's not happening in the West. And so I think these two facts are related. Because if you go to other places like Ukraine, it's not their culture which is taking over the world.
Yes.
So, because there's a need. Why Krishna West? Because there is a need. And Prabhupada has a global strategy. Prabhupada, the way I put it, Prabhupada had a general strategy and a specific strategy. The general strategy was, as a loving father, everyone just go out and preach and do your best. Whether you go to Japan or Mexico or Canada or America or Germany, wherever you just, a loving father that encourages all his children. Everyone go, make your area Krishna conscious. That's the general strategy. But Prabhupada had a clear, specific strategy that his movement depends on success in the West. It depends on it. Because there are two historical possibilities. Number one, ISKCON simply continues to transform into basically a movement for people from a Hindu background. And of course there are other programs, there are devotees from other places, but overwhelmingly it is a movement for people from a Hindu background. It's going in that direction, and if it continues to go in that direction, then within a generation, that's what it'll be. Another point we should consider, and this is not, I always say this, and I want to make this extremely clear, and no matter how hard I try, I am confident of being misunderstood by certain people. But for those who are reasonable and fair, I will say it as strongly as I can. This is not a criticism of people from a Hindu background. They are great souls. They are Vaishnavas. They are beloved members of our family, spiritual family. They should only be praised, not criticized. Everything, what they're doing is perfect. They're giving themselves to Krishna. So it is in no way a criticism of them. It's the opposite. Rather, it's just a fact. It's just a socio-historical, demographic fact that the movement is becoming dangerously unbalanced. And this is the last generation, frankly. We have a few more years, maybe 10, 15, 20 years. Maybe 20 years. That's about it. When there are still, in the Hare Krishna movement, let's say the most senior devotees are Western.
Right.
That situation will end in the near future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's something I think about. Again, it is nothing. It is not in no way a criticism of anyone from an Indian background. They're great souls. They're not a danger to anyone. They're actually, they're Vaishnavas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying that history is moving in a certain direction. And I know that at the present time, ISKCON historically is not moving in the direction that Prabhupada actually dreamed of. Because what Prabhupada dreamed of was a movement which is truly international. His mission, which is, of course, Gaur Nitai's mission, becomes a major, major world religion, becomes a powerful spiritual, cultural force in the West, and transforms the world. And especially in Western Europe and America. Prabhupada said again and again, he said it every day, that America and Western Europe, if they become Krishna conscious, And as we know, in Western Europe, the most prosperous country is Germany. The largest country in population is Germany. Or Germany is, of course, France and England are also important. And other countries, all the countries are important. But Germany is an extremely important country in one of the two most important regions of the world in terms of Prabhupada's global strategy. And so, therefore, there's something very serious at stake here. There is something at risk. I joined the movement when the Western mission was very powerful. That's the Hare Krishna movement I joined. That's the Hare Krishna movement I want to be part of. A movement where we are really transforming the Western world. We are changing the world. That's the movement I fell in love with.
Right.
And that's the movement that Prabhupada loved. And therefore, my body now is 65 years old, believe it or not. Actually, unfortunately, most people would believe it. But so, I am now 65 years old, and I don't know how many years I have left. Only Krishna knows that. But I have no choice. I would be a traitor to Prabhupada. I would betray my own eternal spiritual master if I didn't, at this point, do everything possible, use all of my energy, all of my time, do everything possible to help, because I can't do it alone, to help establish ISKCON as a powerful, influential, major spiritual force in the Western world. There's nothing else for me to do in this world. Except maybe, go to some beautiful place in the country, write books, and play Baroque music on the keyboard. So there's nothing else for me to do. There's nothing else for me to do. And sure, in the beginning when I started Krishna West, I had been away for some time, and maybe my language was a little aggressive. And I can apologize for that. I don't mind apologizing. It doesn't cost anything. So I apologize for that. However, in practice, Krishna West is actually quite moderate. Every single time, in every single case, anywhere in the world, that an ISKCON leader or ISKCON devotees were seriously concerned, we made an adjustment. We compromised. Whether it's in the language of our websites, whether it's in how we organized, every single case in every country, in Mexico, Argentina, in Chile, in Brazil, in the United States, and now I'm going to Europe. I mean, everywhere we work, whenever an ISKCON leader or the GBC or the executive committee has some serious concern, we compromise. We try to, we put as a priority cooperation and peace. Mm-hmm. This is not, as they say, a runaway truck.
Maybe before we talk further on these details, I think it is good to know, for listeners who are not so familiar with that topic, what is in concrete different in a Krishna West program, in a Krishna West kind of center, than in a traditional ISKCON center. What is the difference?
Okay. First, I'll say I think there are many more things that are the same that are different. It's essentially a normal ISKCON center in the sense of Mangal Arati, chanting 16 rounds, following the principles, having class from Prabhupada's books. It's an ISKCON center.
Okay.
What's different is that without changing any basic practices, we try to present it externally within Western culture. For example, dress, Western dress, or people may not sit on the floor unless they want to. Some people like to sit on the floor, or food. I mean, people like Indian food, but not every day. And so, I'm sure there are Indian restaurants in Germany. And I'm sure very few Germans go there every day. So, or even in music. Again, having Prabhupada's same program, but perhaps not always Indian music, not always Indian food, not always Indian architecture, not always Indian dress. So people, a fear that arises for some people, in other words, the package is different. The product is the same. The package is different. And in one sense, I think the more we are normal externally, the more liberty we have to be straightforward about our practices. Because people, in other words, if people are comfortable with us, you can be more open.
Right.
So now people say, "Oh, like if I had a rupee for every time I've heard this, I could, I would be a lakpati. I'd have a lakh of rupees." Devotees say, "Oh, does that mean that you can just go to go into the temple and dress like a slob, or just wear shorts or blue jeans of the women, or just who knows how?" No, because if we read Bhagavad Gita, there actually is a cultural criteria. You can't do anything. But the criteria is not, is it Indian? The criteria is sattva guna, it's being the mode of goodness. Going to what is called in the Vedas Deva Griha, the house of God, it's inappropriate. It's actually stupid to go there just dressed in an extremely informal or inappropriate way. Because it's the house of God. I mean, I learned that when I was a child. That if you go, whether you go to a synagogue or a church or a mosque or a mandir, you show respect.
Right.
So, in the mode of goodness, obviously the mode of good lust is a symptom of passion and ignorance, not goodness. Therefore, if a man or if a woman is dressing, because men are more visually aroused, so if a woman is dressing, she should dress in a way that does not make people forget Krishna. If a woman dresses in a way that makes men forget Krishna, then she's committing violence against them. And of course men also should dress properly. So the mode of goodness is a sufficient criteria for culture.
So in other words, Krishna West promotes more the mode of goodness than a specific cultural custom.
Ethnic tradition, yes. Yes, because the mode of goodness offered to Krishna. In fact, that is what Krishna teaches in the Gita. That you live in the mode of goodness. That's why he goes to so much trouble to explain so many things in the modes. You live in the mode of goodness, and you offer that life to Krishna. And when you offer sattva to Krishna, it becomes Shuddha sattva. So by definition, a spiritual life is a life in the mode of goodness offered to Krishna. And because it tends to be not what Krishna actually teaches, the mode of goodness offered to Krishna, but Indian, therefore an Indian item in the mode of passion is okay, and something Western in the mode of goodness is not okay. For example, food. A large amount of food, bhoga, offered to Krishna is very much in the mode of passion, according to the Bhagavad Gita. For example, food that is hot and spicy is in the mode of passion. Food that is not healthy is in the mode of passion and ignorance. If you only ate Mahaprasadam, you probably wouldn't live very long. And so people say, but that's what Krishna likes. But in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also says that the mode of goodness is best. Offer me. In fact, the Bhagavatam, Krishna says, offer me things in goodness. And so if something is, for example, I've seen this. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen it personally. I've seen it on YouTube, where there'll be like Rath Yatra festivals. I can give you many examples of things I've actually seen, where they have stage performances, where the people are not, the women or the men, not even dressed chastely. Not even dressed, but it's Indian. So something in the mode of passion is okay if it's Indian, and something in the mode of goodness is somehow not good even if it's Western. That's not scientific. The spiritual science is not about ethnic traditions. The spiritual science is what Krishna teaches in the Gita. Sattva gun, rajoguna, tamoguna. So to say that we should live in goodness, that's the science. And in fact, because we have de-emphasized that objective cultural criteria, and we have emphasized Indianness, the result is that frankly there's a bit of a de-emphasis in ISKCON on actual goodness. If you wear a dhoti, you're a good devotee even if you don't treat people properly. You know, as long as you're very Indian in the way you live, even if you're just not nice, you're still a good devotee. So, I'm sure in Germany, certainly in America, it's very powerful, where people make this distinction between religious and spiritual.
Yes.
And guess where that comes from? It comes from people in general observing religious people.
Okay.
It's acts. In fact, someone just told me they did a scientific study, and they found that religious people that are very religious, tend to be less compassionate than people in general.
Yes, I can give a practical example where I witnessed exactly what you said. We were going inside a plane, and there was a full-fledged dressed Muslim with every mark you can imagine to immediately discover him as a Muslim, with a beard, with white clothes. And I just asked him, could I go to that row there behind? And he was so rough. He was even hitting me with his elbow, and I was so shocked. And he was just, we were going from Frankfurt via a Muslim country to India, and he was only focused, I am going to Mecca. And you are all irreligious people, and I am going to Mecca. I could see this consciousness in his eyes, and that was exactly what you explained. He was so religious, but even very simple qualities like kindness were, at least in that situation, completely absent.
Yes. So, yes, exactly. So what I believe we should do is emphasize goodness. Goodness offered to Krishna, not goodness without Krishna. Because that's the very definition of the spiritual platform. Shuddha Sattva. The activity by itself is Sattva, goodness. And when you offer it to Krishna, as explained in the Gita, I think it's 4:24, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir. When you offer something to Krishna, it becomes spiritual. So it is Shuddha, it is purified. So that's what, by definition, Shuddha Sattva. And I think if we say to people that objectively, and it is obvious, there are three modes of nature. There's an obvious difference between goodness, passion, and ignorance. It's empirical. And if we say to people, what does it mean to practice bhakti yoga? It means you cultivate goodness and you offer it to Krishna. That is a spiritual science.
So in other words, could you explain the reason why Krishna conscious devotees or the members of ISKCON tend to appear in ISKCON centers in a sloppy way as soon as you allow them? Yes, you can also come in Western clothes. And immediately many of them... Good
question. Yes, I think the reason is, rather than teaching culture, we taught rules. Prabhupada once wrote me a letter in 1972, it's in the database, when I took sannyas and I started to travel and preach in American universities. And Prabhupada wrote me a letter right at the beginning and said, please do not present Krishna consciousness as a bunch of rules. It is the most sublime philosophy. And Prabhupada also said, by the way, he said, I know that you, my disciples, don't care about how you look, but for my sake, dress nicely. So I think that we have not emphasized common virtues. When you go to a house of God, show respect. Show respect. For example, sometimes when I'm out on my japa walks, I take long japa walks, and sometimes I'll stop in a church just to rest, or just, it's nice to be in a religious place. And so I take my hat off. Why? To show respect. And if I go into a synagogue, I put the little hat on for the same reason, to show respect. So the fact that people go to temples dressed inappropriately in Western dress, frankly, it shows we have not given them culture. We did not train these people. We gave them rules, but not culture. Because how could a cultured person go into a temple like that?
Right.
We have not given culture, we've given rules. And then when you get to the point where you don't want to follow that rule, there's no culture.
I very much believe that usually, especially the women, are a little bit concerned when they heard something about they should dress appropriately in the mode of goodness. When they hear such things, some of them gets a little uncomfortable. What do you exactly mean? How should women dress?
Well, they have to wait for our first edition of our Krishna West ladies fashion magazine. I'm just kidding. I think it's common sense. Non-devotees understand it. It's not, they're not going to, it just means, well, to give an example, they did a recent poll study, and it turns out that I think the most respected or admired or something, Umfrage. Eine Umfrage. And they found that the most respected or admired woman in the world was Hillary Clinton. Now, obviously, she's not known as being a great fashion lady, but at the same time, she's she dresses nicely and very chastely. Look at Angela Merkel. I mean, Angela Merkel dresses chastely. She is a woman that has self-respect, and people respect her. She's very respected everywhere. Why? Because she respects herself. And she dresses chastely. And so does Hillary Clinton. So, if I would say to a woman, if you don't know what types of displays around, what planet have you been on? I mean, where have you been? Like, are you coming from some other sector of the galaxy? We all know that. We all know that men are fools, and they tend, and also science tells us what we already knew, that men are highly aroused and agitated visually, and that's why 99.9% of the pornography on the web or anywhere else is men looking at women.
Right.
I guess maybe not 99.9% because there's also homosexual websites, but let's say the overwhelming preponderance, and that's not socially constructed. It's natural. That is actually the result of just human nature. So therefore, knowing that men are so weak and are so liable to be disturbed and agitated and become stupid, because other studies show that when in the presence of women, men actually become stupid, which we already should know that. So actually, this has been scientifically confirmed. So if a woman knows that, and if a woman has compassion, in other words, I have a very simple question for women. What is more important to you? Your vanity or your compassion?
Oh, interesting.
Which is more important to you? Are you more concerned with helping your brothers and showing love and compassion and helping them to go back to Krishna? Or is it more important to you than helping people go back to Krishna is your vanity? And if the answer is your vanity, then probably Krishna West is not for you. Women, I'll tell you just my natural reaction. I mean, obviously, as trying to be a devotee and trying to be a sannyasi, it's not that I go around just looking at women, but you see them, and they're everywhere. It's like men are everywhere. And so I've noticed a spontaneous reaction in myself, spontaneous, that when I see women, let's say with a long skirt, for example, not devotees, just women, I just spontaneously respect them. I just feel a real respect for them. So that's the question you have to ask yourself. What's more important, your vanity or compassion towards other souls? What's more important?
Mm-hmm. Yes, very interesting.
Well, see, that's an example of what Prabhupada said. What I just explained is not a rule. It is philosophy. It is philosophy based on social science, based on history, and based on spiritual principles. It's not the rule follows the philosophy. The philosophy doesn't exist to justify the rule. Just like, for example, some people may say, no, we have to dress in Indian dress, and therefore they try to develop arguments, which are, to be honest, a little unnatural, but actually, let's start with science. Prabhupada was not against science. Prabhupada was against what is called scientism. That's a word, actually. But scientism means sort of a fanatical belief in science, an irrational belief in the power of science to explain everything, which is irrational. So, Prabhupada was against scientism, scientismus. In other words, the idea that science can explain life, or the idea that, sure, there is bios, logos, biology from the Greek, the study of life, but they can't explain the ultimate origin. They can only explain the physical conditions in which life is sustained in a particular environment. So, Prabhupada was against scientism. Prabhupada loved science. If he found there was a new technology where he could fly faster to his destination, there was a better dictaphone, there was a cure for disease. Don't forget that when Prabhupada was in a lot of discomfort toward the end of his stay here in this world, in Vrindavan, and all the Ayurveda doctors couldn't help him, but he went to England, just a regular English doctor relieved all his discomfort. So Prabhupada was not against science. He was against such as, sort of what I call epistemological imperialism, where science thinks it can explain everything. So, scientifically, Prabhupada said it's philosophy, it's science. The rule follows the science. Scientifically, the four sinful activities ruin consciousness. Scientifically. The rule follows science. Science, we don't try to fabricate science to justify a rule.
Okay. Suppose there is a Krishna West center established at some place, somewhere, where also a traditional ISKCON center is placed. How can we understand the relationship between these two centers?
Eine gute Frage. Danke.
To be more specific,
yes.
For instance, how should a member of Krishna West behave in a traditional ISKCON center? And here are two options. Maybe he is just a regular visitor, like everybody else, or maybe he is some very experienced devotee, skilled in giving lectures, singing bhajans, an experienced cook or priest. What is your guideline in this connection?
Vielen Dank für diese Frage. First of all, we already have a practical example. So this is not a Trojan horse. We have an example in North Carolina where there is a large and old Hare Krishna community, New Goloka, with many devotees, installed Radha Krishna deities. And we, literally 20 minutes away, in the main university city, Chapel Hill, we are already there developing our center. The relationship between the two projects is perfect. It's like one community. It's actually like one community. And the devotees are all friends. They all help each other. Krishna West devotees help the temple. They do service in the temple. The temple project, as far as what our official policy is in Krishna West, that when you go to an ISKCON, any ISKCON temple, respect their rules. So when you go, because the temples, we respect, the temples have a right to establish things their own way. We may do things a little differently, but, that's our project. So, for example, if I personally go to any ISKCON temple, and if they prefer that sannyasis, dress a certain way, then of course I'll do that. And the devotees themselves, if they want women to wear saris, if they say, that's what we expect from initiated devotees, then the women should wear saris, the men should wear dhotis. Especially if they're going to, nowadays in ISKCON temples, if you just go in part of the congregation, no one cares that much. But let's say more to the point, if a Krishna West devotee, let's say, is going to do puja in a temple, yes, then we insist that they follow all of the rules of that temple. If they're going to give class, they must follow the standards of that temple. If they're going to lead kirtan, if the temple says, we want people in dhotis or saris to lead kirtan, and if they want to lead kirtan, they must respect the rules of that temple.
Okay.
So, because after all, the whole point of Krishna West is to show respect to the non-devotees. So why respect non-devotees and not respect devotees? And that's the real point. It's not about East or West. It's not about that somehow I fell in love with Western culture. That's not the point. It's about respect. It's about if I show respect to them, it's much more likely they'll show respect to me. And that's actually what sociology has confirmed. That when you adapt and show that, for example, now in Europe, to be perfectly honest, there's this big, there's all these huge cultural and political issues about demographics, about non-European populations coming into Europe, and they dress their own way and they have their own culture. And I think I'm sort of in the middle on that topic. I agree with Angela Merkel. When she declared, it was a very famous speech she gave, when she declared that this experiment in just sort of cultural relativity did not work. And I believe that if I'm in a country, whether it's Germany or America or India, actually, I should respect the culture of that place. Obviously, I follow my principles of Krishna consciousness. But if I go to Germany, for example, in Italy, especially, I should say southern Italy, like I saw in Naples, the traffic laws are suggestions. Like, you might want to consider this. And also many parts of Latin America is like that. In Germany, I think it's a little different. So if when I'm in Germany, I'm not going to drive as if I were in Latin America or Italy or southern Italy. Mm-hmm. Well, so if I go to Germany, it's my responsibility, because when I go to Germany, I'm receiving so many benefits from that country. Whether it's just public security, whether it's the fact that it's clean, that it's organized, that there's so many public services there. If I get sick, they're going to take care of me. I owe them that respect. Mm-hmm. I owe them that respect in Germany to try as far as I can to follow their way of doing things. And as far as my identity as a Vaishnava, I can be perfectly honest and tell you that my attachment to Prabhupada, my attachment to Krishna, my commitment to Prabhupada and Krishna is not based on the way I dress. I feel a I have a serious, grave responsibility to follow certain principles, to practice my spiritual life properly, to teach within the boundaries of Lord Chaitanya's teachings, and Jiva Goswami, and Rupa Goswami, and Prabhupada. However, in external things, frankly, I can say personally, it just doesn't make, I don't feel more Krishna conscious if I dress this way or that way, because I don't really identify with my body. Well, I mean, I wish I identified less with my body, but, you know, I'm a work in progress. But I would say for the most part, I'm just not into my body. And I don't remember during the day what I'm wearing. I just, I try to dress neat, be neat and clean and so on, but I don't think about it. I can go a whole day and not think one time about how I'm dressed. And so therefore, more important to me than dressing this way, and if I went to India, for example, when I go to Mayapur, I know they're sensitive about these things, I only wear a dhoti. Why? Because I have to respect that place.
Right.
And so to me, it's not about East and West, it's about respect. And I believe that in the Western world is not just the fallen, disgusting, degraded, horrible, hellish, non-India. Mm-hmm. Actually, in many ways, the West, places like Germany, like Denmark, certain parts of America, I mean, there are many ways in which these countries are much more Vedic than India. In some ways. For example, having an honest government is Vedic. And if you look at the governments of Northern Europe compared to India, it's like ridiculous. Keeping the public space clean, following the rules, law and order, proper medical attention, defending women from rape. There are many, keeping public parks in good order. There are many ways in which Germany, Western countries, are more Vedic than India.
Right.
And therefore, when I think of Germany, I think of this. Of course I see the problems. I understand, the ways in which the German nation is not Krishna conscious. Of course I understand that. However, I see it as this, how do you say, wunderbares Land. I really see it that way. America, I really see the West, and of course other countries also, not only the West. But Prabhupada has always encouraged me to preach in the West. When I first took sannyas, the GBC officially voted I should go to India, because I knew some Sanskrit. And Prabhupada said, what? What's he going to do in India? Prabhupada insisted I stay in the West. When I wanted to go to Latin America, Prabhupada said, why are you leaving America? So Prabhupada actually wanted me to preach in the West. And I see these Western, I'm going to Scandinavia. I understand the problems. I understand these are not vegetarian countries. I understand about, all these things. However, in many ways, I see the West as these wonderful, beautiful countries, full of good, intelligent people. One time I was walking with Prabhupada. And a brahmachari, there was a custom when Prabhupada was here on morning walks where all these young devotees would try to tell Prabhupada the most horrible news they'd heard about the degradations of Kali Yuga and how bad it is out there, like to show the need for Krishna consciousness. So, I mean, it was so funny. So, like Prabhupada in some country, priests are eating babies, or, just whatever they could come up with. And that became like, so if there was like a hospital for alcoholic priests, then that means all priests were alcoholics, and it shows how other religions are useless, and so on. So one devotee came to Prabhupada. We were walking in Rancho Park in Los Angeles, and the devotee, Prabhupada, I heard that he said that, he was saying that, because he was a Sankirtan devotee. He said, Prabhupada, these Americans are so materialistic, and they're just, they're so fallen and demonic, and Prabhupada actually stopped him and said, no. He said, they're good people. They're just ignorant. You have to teach them. And so when I look at Germany, in spite of everything, I look at America or Scandinavia or France or any of these countries, Australia, Canada, I think these are wonderful places, full of pious, good, intelligent people. And I show that to them I show my solidarity with them by the way I present myself. I want them to know that I respect them. And philosophically, the relationship between devotees and non-devotees is one and different. One and different. If you read Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks several times of his devotees as a separate community. He says Mad Bhakta. So it's clear, as we know, Krishna's devotees are a special community, and they associate with each other. Machita, bodhiyanta parasparam, they enlighten one another. So we know the devotees are a special community, and they live together. At the same time, there are many verses in the Gita where Krishna speaks about everyone as a single group. Krishna says twice in the Gita, and Arjuna says once, that Krishna is the father of the universe. Krishna says, Pitaham lokasya chara... No, Pitasi, Arjuna says, Pitasi lokasya chara chara. So you are the father of the world, of all creatures. And Krishna says, the verse Prabhupada used to quote, Aham bija pradak pita. I am the seed-giving father. And Krishna says, Pitaham asya jagato. I am the father of the world, of this world. Not only patri et filio, and the mother, mata, dhata, pitamaha, the grandfather. So all souls are one group, one family. And in that one group, the devotees are a special community. So therefore, when I go out in public, when I meet German people, Americans, Norwegians, or just because I'm focused on the West, that's my service, I want my dress and I want my presentation of dress, music, food to communicate two facts. Not one fact, two facts. Number one, I am one with you. We are family. I respect you. I respect your culture. Not everything in it, but, in general. I respect you and I respect your culture. Second fact, I know something you don't know. Ich weiß etwas, das du weißt nicht. So, both facts. If I present myself in such a way, so the message is, in every way I'm different than you. Everything about me is different. The only thing that similar, ähnlich, die einige Ähnlichkeit is that I'm anatomically human. The only similarity is physiological. But culturally, we are 100% different from you. Scientific studies show that this does not work. History has shown it. Science has shown it. And every time we have tried to fight against the laws of nature, which are Krishna's laws, they're not Maya's laws. Krishna says, Mayadhyakshena prakriti, by my supervision. Dharma means law. And the laws of nature are Krishna's laws. And so I am trying to, and actually, if I do Harinam, let's say, in anywhere in the Western world, I really do feel one with the people. I mean, don't forget, I'm not claiming to be a Paramahansa because, I'll obviously be decapitated, and because I know my own defects. However, the direction we're going in, the Paramahansa, is to see everyone as connected to Krishna. Krishna says again and again and again, see everyone equally, see me in everyone. And so I feel about the non-devotees that we are family. We are family. We are one.
Mm-hmm. So Maharaj,
I showed them.
Okay.
Yes.
So Maharaj, in other words, what I understand more and more is that Krishna West is more like a whole attitude towards Western culture related to Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, that's fair to say.
And the mission of Krishna West is to completely assimilate this kind of attitude to be in some way successful.
Yes. Ich bin damit einverstanden.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's I agree. It is. It's because you cannot, how should I put it? If we do not sincerely, not as a tactic, not as a game, but if we do not sincerely respect them, they will not respect us. There is a law in the universe of reciprocation. Even God himself reciprocates. Yeyata mam prapadyate. Yeyata mam prapadyate is not only how Krishna deals, it's how every part and parcel of Krishna deals. It is a universal law. People, if you show them respect, they will show you respect. If you really like them and respect them, they will like and respect you. And if you show them by your body language that you don't respect their culture, they will not respect yours. And that's exactly what history shows, what social science shows.
Mm-hmm.
So what I want to sell it, you see, I don't want, frankly, if I would not do a festival of India personally. I would do a festival of Western spirituality. If I was in Germany, I would do a festival of German spirituality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I would show the roots. What I want, my message for Western Europe is that we are presenting Indo-European culture.
Okay. Maharaj, and before we talk about that, that is a whole big topic, Indo-European.
And also just one thing, Prabhupada Indo-European, Prabhupada uses an older term, Indo-Aryan.
Okay.
But if you look up, Prabhupada directly says in the Bhagavatam, I believe it's the 4th canto, that this is Indo-European culture.
Right, Maharaj, before we talk about this,
yes.
Let me offer you a couple of doubts, which I'm pretty sure people may present now. They will say, some of them will say, you talked so much about respect. Why did Srila Prabhupada come to America and didn't change his dress according to American culture?
Yes. There's a story, I forget who I heard it from, one of Prabhupada's secretaries, where Prabhupada had to go somewhere where there was some problem with Indian dress, and Prabhupada said, should I change my dress? I would say that this is my own take on human psychology. Not what should be. I just think this is real world human psychology. That when a gentleman, an elderly gentleman, comes from India, dressed with Indian dress, I think everyone respects that. And some people respect even when a Western person uses Indian dress. Some people respect that. Many people find it strange. Many people, because let's say if someone's German, and again, I'm not talking about the way the world should be. I'm talking about what I think is just human psychology, not the way the world should be. I believe that when a German dresses like an Indian. For many people, not everyone, but for many people, in fact, I'll say almost most people, there is a non-rational emotional reaction. It's not rational, it's just a natural psychology of feeling a little bit like this person has rejected our culture. That our culture is not good enough for you, that you rejected it. And again, I'm not saying they should think that way. I'm not saying that it's a rational conclusion. I'm saying that's real psychology. It's just the way it is. And I think we have to deal with the world the way it really is. And like the typical story, because Prabhupada, I feel like I'm doing the same thing Prabhupada is. This may sound ironic, or it is ironic. It may sound. Prabhupada had extraordinary dignity, and he was a perfect gentleman. And when he came to America, he acted with dignity. This is who I am. This is the way I dress. Okay. And because Prabhupada had the right kind of self-respect, everyone respected him. Mm-hmm. I'm not Indian. And if you say, but that's the Vedic sannyas devotee, well, maybe it was adopted from the Ramakrishna mission. And again, Prabhupada personally told me that I should understand sannyas by studying the 6 Goswamis in that song, Bande Rupa Sanatano. And in that song, we have obvious evidence, zonin klar. We have obvious evidence that the 6 Goswamis did not dress as our sannyasis do today. And so therefore, and I have direct statements from Prabhupada, saying that even a sannyasi, sometimes Prabhupada says you can wear Western dress, but not a sannyasi. And other times Prabhupada says even a sannyasi. Prabhupada consciously sent Tamal Krishna Goswami to China, knowing that he was going to adjust all these things. I believe, and this is my view, and people may not agree with me. In fact, there are very advanced and very wonderful devotees that don't agree with me, because it is a material detail. But I believe at this point in history, in order to really move forward powerfully, certain adjustments are needed. At least some of us, not everyone. Devotees that don't like this don't have to do it. But I think some of us must do it. And that's not a commentary on Vedic culture or Prabhupada. It's an analysis of history. And it's a sociological, socio-historical analysis. And by definition, a socio-historical analysis is not an absolute truth, it's just an analysis. And if I'm right, Krishna will show that I'm right. And if I'm wrong, Krishna will show that I'm wrong. And that's the way it is. So Krishna will show us. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to deal with the world as it really is, not as we'd like it to be, but as it actually is. And I believe that as the world really is today, that at least some of us, not everyone, and not pujaris, but some of us have to make certain adjustments. And if I'm wrong, Krishna will show the world, and I will have the great mercy of being, embarrassed on an international level, and that'll probably be very good for my spiritual life, make me a little more humble, and then I can go write books. So, actually, for many years, I was kind of almost like I didn't really go out to do this because I thought, oh my God, what if I failed? It'll be like almost like this unbearable embarrassment. But then I got to the point I realized, so what? Because I mean, I'm actually risking, in a sense, that because I will become probably the biggest fool in the world if it doesn't work. So, and again, no one has to worry that about deviation, because if we do not remain faithful to Prabhupada's teachings, his practices, his institution, everyone will know it. And if it doesn't really increase the preaching, everyone will know it. So I think an intelligent response to Krishna West would be curiosity. Curiosity, because if it doesn't work, everyone will know it, and then I will have to just give it up, or just ISKCON get rid of me because I'm a disturbance. And the devotees in Krishna West are very loyal to ISKCON. It's funny because they always come to me and say, "You can't say that because the GBC won't like it." I mean, it's funny. The leaders of Krishna West are extremely loyal to Prabhupada and ISKCON. And they are deeply concerned about being respected members of ISKCON. So it's not, you see, it's not a movement made up of frustrated people that want revenge on ISKCON. You know, if you think of like certain Gaudiya Math people, so-called acharyas, who came and stole people, and the people they stole were people who were not happy in ISKCON. People who had some grievance, some complaint that I was mistreated, or this happened, or my guru fell down. And people who knowingly, with their eyes open, chose something else that was not ISKCON. Krishna West is actually the exact opposite of that. Krishna West is not made up of people who are frustrated with ISKCON. It's actually made up of people who are very loyal to ISKCON, and who love ISKCON, and who love Prabhupada, and that's the reality of it. So there's no real danger of it becoming some kind of, another deviant thing. And what if it works? What if it actually works? What if this is, as we say in America, a game changer? What if this really works? I mean, imagine the benefit for ISKCON. And I don't see, because frankly, there are very, very, very few devotees in Krishna West, and I think no leaders at all, that would even follow me if I left ISKCON. Because they've been trained properly. So I don't see the great danger, and what if it works? What if this changes history? Not me. Only Prabhupada can change history in Krishna. But what if, because, what we find is Prabhupada often makes different kinds of statements on the same topic, but because of our own psychology, it's very common in ISKCON that devotees will embrace one of those statements and ignore the other one. Right. To give an example, there's one story that's very famous. I don't know if you've heard of it, but that when Prabhupada came to America, he said, "I didn't come to learn from them. I came to teach them, how to eat with their, their hands." But so some people love that statement. Why? Because frankly, immature devotees tend to love statements where Prabhupada bashes the West and puts them down, and they're nothing, and we're everything. They love those statements. But the actual truth is that Prabhupada says in his Bhagavatam that we should make all adjustments according to time and place. We should do whatever is needed to make Western people comfortable. Obviously within boundaries. It doesn't mean that we eat meat or give up. Like if someone says, "I don't like the word Krishna," that's your problem. We're going to chant Hare Krishna. But if someone says, "I prefer Western music," that's not demonic. It's not saying I don't like Krishna. So Prabhupada adjusted a million things. Prabhupada said, I didn't come to learn from them. Well, Prabhupada he learned so many things. He used all the Western technology. He formed a corporation. Guess what? Corporations are a Western invention. The very fact that he incorporated ISKCON and set it up in a certain legal way was something he learned from the West.
It's even funny.
So this attitude, what's that?
It's even funny, the word GBC is adopted from the British Railway Institution. which was operating in India 100 years ago or so.
Yes, yes. And there's so many things. So, frankly, this attitude that you have nothing to tell us, we will tell you, is probably the fastest possible way to make yourself irrelevant in a country.
Maharaj, I don't know what your schedule is. One idea is that if it is comfortable for you, we make a break, let's say 20 minutes, and then we could do another 45-minute session and discuss some further things. What do you think? Right. Should we meet at our clock says now 5 minutes to 7 p.m. What
about 7:30? What about 7:30?
Yes, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I'm getting little hoarse and.
Ich habe Hunger. Ich habe fast nicht gegessen heute.
Okay.
Yes.
You're fasting.
Then we meet.
Vielen Dank. What's that?
We meet again at 7:30 German time. Dann
Auf Wiederskypen.
Genau, have a nice meal.
Yes.
Auf Wiederskypen.
Wiederskype. Auf Wiederskype.